Yo, what is going on, guys? You got Glop, and today I'm going to be bringing you some coverage of Week 9 of the DGBA. So, there's a little bit of history and some context that goes into this match that I'd like to discuss. As always, before we get into the team builder section here, if you would like to skip to the battle, right now on your screen, you're going to be seeing a timestamp for that. So go ahead and check that out. And also, if you guys do not know, there is a free Discord I have now to join. I plug it a lot of times on my stream, but I really need to start mentioning it here more in my Discord, so down in the description, you're going to find that as well. Now, getting into this match here, this was arguably the scariest matchup I've had to go into. And our opponent is Tezzy. Now, to give you some backstory on him, I believe at this point in the season, he was either 8-1 or 7-2, one of the two. So he's had an incredibly good season. So watching his replays, I could tell he's a very good player. So this definitely had me stressed out. So the little bit of funny story here is, as you can see, our first member is Shadow Man. And Shadow Man, of course, is a good friend of mine. He is a fun person to have on the stream. As always, he comments on my videos. Anyhow, we were in a call, and basically it was the night before I had to play. I had to get up at like 6, 7 in the morning because this guy is in a different country. Schedule was crazy and everything. So I had really stalled building. And so Shadow Man called me at midnight my time and was like, "You're not getting out of this call until you build for this guy." So we sat together, we ran some calcs, we put some things together, and this is what we came up with. So thank you again, man. Seriously, that was really fun, and I'm really glad you took the time to do that for me. So let's go ahead and look at this. So the matchup, looking at Tezzy's team, he has a roster of Mawile Mega, Tapu Bulu, Hydreigon, Toxapex, Talonflame, Terrakion, Palossand, Rotom Frost, Blastoise, Orbeetle, Regigigas, and Karkle. So just looking at the main core of this guy's team, you could tell he's a threat. I mean, literally just looking at the top 6, these are all very threatening Pokemon, both offensively and defensively. Great type synergy, good speed tiers, good power, good coverage, really big threats. And when I looked at his team, the glaring threat to me was going to be the Hydreigon. As you can see, based on my roster, I don't have any fairy types. So Draco Meteor is like the most free thing for him ever to click. And with Hydreigon now having access to Nasty Plot, that could be very deadly for me, because if it gets a Nasty Plot up, I basically have no switch in, somebody's got to die. So I need to make sure I play around that intelligently. Mawile is always a big threat. Fortunately, I do have a handful of good defensive Pokemon to take it on, but it's still going to be very scary. Toxapex is annoying for my team because I don't have a really clear-cut way to break through it. It kind of shuts down Urshifu and to a certain extent Heracross, or can at least threaten a burn or haze. And then Talonflame I thought was pretty intimidating as well, just because it has a great speed tier, access to Will-O-Wisp and Toxic and Taunt. That really shuts down my more defensive-oriented style, so I've got to find a creative way to get around that. So let's go ahead and break down the team here. So the first member I've got, of course, is named after Shadow Man, and this is our Heracross. I figured that the best way to approach this matchup here is to sort of match offense with offense. So this time I'm actually bringing a much more offensively inclined team, as you're going to see. So here we've got Heracross. We're using close combat for our stab. We've got Rock Blast to snipe the Talonflame. We got High Horsepower, kind of an interesting option here. I wanted something to hit Toxapex much harder. And since he has a Tapu Bulu, I figured that High Horsepower is kind of the way to go, because this ignores the decrease in power that normally Earthquake would receive. 95 accuracy is a little bit shaky, but it also gives us a way to hit the Terrakion without dropping our defenses. And the final move, of course, is Bullet Seed. Bullet Seed is kind of a nice middle ground attack. It's going to do good damage to Terrakion as well. And let's say that Toxapex switches in and Grassy Terrain is up. I can go for High Horsepower into Bullet Seed, which is almost always a KO on physically defensive. So that's pretty nice. Also gives us some coverage against the Blastoise as well as the Palossand. So that's really the main reason why I wanted to bring this, just in case they bring that. So the next member I have here is our Hippowdon, the good old reliable physically defensive set. We've got Stealth Rock, High Horsepower, Rock Slide, and Slack Off. So Rock Slide is there to hit Talonflame. Obviously, we've got our Stab. We don't want it being weakened by Grassy Terrain, so we're using High Horsepower, Rocks, and Recovery. We're using Rocky Helmet here to chip down physical attackers like the Terrakion as well as the Mega Mawile, helping to put them in range of our other Pokemon attacks. So as you can see here, for example, this is how much Play Rough is doing. Pretty damn strong. This is Adamant Max Attack Mega Mawile at +2. Very minimum chance to OHKO us. And you're probably wondering about my EVs over here. So I've got 8 speed. The reason is that the defense EV does not make a difference in our survivability for that attack, as you can see. So I figured may as well put a little bit into speed just in case he's speed creeping, you know, no speed or 4 speed Hippowdon. You know, it could come into play, it could not, but I figured it's the smartest thing to do. So the next member we've got here is Moltres, and Moltres is really the crux of this team. Again, my goal is to match offense with offense, so I need ways to get in my strong hitters, and I figure that U-turn is going to be a great way to do that. So I've got U-turn here on my Moltres. I don't even think I have removal on this team. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did not. Oh, I do have it. I do have defog. Whew. Well, I opted for U-turn as opposed to a status move, again, because I think that the momentum is going to be a very important aspect, whether that's taking an attack and then U-turning out to bring in one of our attackers safely, or just pressuring things with Flamethrower and getting a U-turn on the switch. Both of those can be really valuable for us. So the EVs here are kind of crazy. I'm going to talk about those a little bit. Real quick, Heracross is EV to outspeed max speed Jolly Mega Mawile. And Moltres here is EV to outspeed max speed Adamant Tapu Bulu. So we will at least cover for that speed benchmark. Max HP to maximize our bulk. And then, like I said, Moltres is kind of like the glue to this team. And again, I don't have a fairy type. I can't really stop Hydreigon, but this Moltres provides me with some interesting options if the Hydreigon does come in on it. So I'll kind of illustrate that here. Let's go ahead and pull up Hydreigon. And a couple things to note. Life Orb could be a viable set. He could run Nasty Plot. He could run Specs. He can really do anything with this. So I've got to have ways to kind of cover as much as possible. So that's kind of why I've EV'd this Moltres the way I have. So let's take a look at a few calcs that are noteworthy. So the first thing I want to look at here is if we give this thing Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse is a nice consistent option for him because it doesn't drop his special attack. And if he gets a Nasty Plot up, somebody's got to take that hit, right? So let's go ahead and show a +2 Life Orb. As you can see with the EVs I have here, very minimum chance to actually OHKO us. So we could theoretically come in on this thing as a Nasty Plots and then take a Dark Pulse. Obviously, if you Draco Meteors, somebody's got to die, but I'm actually okay with that because in that situation, he's at neutral special attack. I can bring out Urshifu or Heracross, and he's kind of inclined to want to switch out, and we can make a play based on that. So as you can see here, we can take a +2 Timid Life Orb Dark Pulse. Now, of course, if it's modest, we're just going to get destroyed. But, you know, there isn't a lot of counterplay here. So the other thing I wanted to showcase, of course, was going to be the Choice Specs variant, if he opts to bring that. And as you can see here, even a modest max special attack Draco Meteor is only a 25% chance to actually OHKO us. So I thought that that was pretty important. Dark Pulse obviously is going to be a 2-8 KO, but from there we could pivot into Heracross or into our Urshifu, depending on what the situation calls for. Now, the other thing to note is that I think that a Roost set could be very scary, which is again why I'm bringing U-turn here, because as you can see, it's doing non-negligible damage. And the important thing is that it actually synergizes very well with the Urshifu, which we're going to get to in just a minute. I'm actually running a Choice Scarf on that thing, so I can basically come in after a U-turn, and I can threaten out this Hydreigon. So that's about it for Moltres there. The defense EVs were to always 100% survive a Mega Mawile Sucker Punch at +2. And I think there was another benchmark I set for that one. Probably had something to do. Oh, it was Talonflame. That's right. I can showcase that very quickly here. So, assuming that they're running a max attack Talonflame, for example, with Adamant Nature, even if they're at +2, we are guaranteed to live this Brave Bird from full, which is crucial because we can go for that U-turn. And again, I'm using a Choice Scarf Urshifu. So if I get even a little bit of damage, we've broken the Gale Wings. Let's say, for example, he's running like, I don't know, Acrobatics or some other crazy move. The important thing is that we're always going to break Gale Wings, meaning that we can U-turn out into our Urshifu and Revenge Kill that with a Choice Scarf Surging Strikes. So again, that's kind of showcasing what this Moltres has the potential to do in this matchup. Now, the next member here, this is actually going to be their debut game. This is our Lycanroc, named Tasha, after my dog. And Tasha here is pretty interesting. We've got enough speed to outspeed max speed Terrakion. We've got max attack, and the rest is going to be poured into our defense. The thought process there is that if we're going to be setting up on anything, it's probably going to be that Talonflame. So may as well cushion the blows against that as much as possible. What's also pretty cool here is that obviously we have the Sand Rush ability, so we're going to be outspeeding anything that sets up speed boosts. For example, maybe like a Dragon Dance Hydreigon when sand is up. And also it synergizes quite nice with Lycanroc because we get that Spadef boost from the sand, which is pretty cool. So the only really calc I would show off here, of course, is that we actually do a lot of damage with this thing. I was quite surprised by these damage calcs here, but as you can see, for example, close combat, always going to be a one-shot on Hydreigon, even if they're running max HP, for example, which they totally could. They could run like max speed, max HP with Nasty Plot to set up on our more passive teammates. You can see here that if we get Stealth Rock up, that's still a guaranteed OHKO. And the thing is, this Pokemon does not do non-negligible damage to Toxapex either. And the thought here is that I'm trying to overwhelm Toxapex with a lot of physical attackers so that one of them can break through and open up a door to just clean up in the end. So as you can see here, if we're at +2 for Drill Run, we're doing pretty considerate damage. It's got to make the choice between Scald or Haze, and then from there we can just throw off like a Stone Edge, or we can go for another Drill Run, get the KO. Now obviously Lycanroc is going to struggle versus Palossand, but we've got other teammates that can help with that, so as long as we play around that thing, we should be okay. The next member I've got here is Tangrowth, and this, folks, this is the key to winning this matchup. I am not even exaggerating. Tangrowth is going to be everything in this game, so the entire season I've basically been using defensive Tangrowths, and I figured that I need some kind of surprise factor, something that's going to give me a competitive edge in this matchup. Otherwise, we just stand no chance. So I'm actually opting for a very crazy set. That's right, we are going with an offensive Tangrowth, and we're using max speed, max special attack. The reason here is that we will speed tie at worst with max speed Adamant Mega Mawile. That can be pretty crucial for Sucker Punch games. For example, with Sleep Powder, we can actually dodge that. And with Sleep Powder, we can also feign that maybe we are a defensive set. We could go for a Sleep Powder, switch out. He's probably just going to think we got a defensive spread. And this is going to be really, really great for netting some surprise KOs. I actually want to showcase some of these damage rolls as well because they're crazy. They're actually crazy. So to give you a little bit of insight in terms of how strong this Pokemon is going to be, here is the calc for Leaf Storm versus a physically defensive Toxapex. I do think you need to bring Fizdef in this matchup, considering there is a Heracross, a Lycanroc, and a Urshifu. And as you can see, this is doing severe damage to Toxapex. And for example, if Grassy Terrain is up and we bring this thing in, we could get a surprise KO on Toxapex, which is actually huge. As you can see here, about an 87.5% chance to OHKO max HP Toxapex. And that's actually huge because if we can kind of fake that we're a defensive set and then launch off this powerful Leaf Storm onto the Toxapex, that could literally change the outcome of the game. We could get a KO on Toxapex, open up a door for Urshifu, just come in and click buttons and win the game. So Focus Blast here is to hit the Hydreigon harder, but as you're about to see, even if, like, we don't even have to predict really with this Pokemon. Like, if Grassy Terrain's up, we're doing severe damage to Hydreigon to the point where it's got to go for a Roost, and we can switch either into Moltres or Heracross, or Moltres or Urshifu, depending on how aggressive I want to be. And you can see, like, we're doing amazing damage. Focus Blast is always going to one-shot that thing. Ancient Power is there for the Toxapex. Not Toxapex, sorry, the Talonflame, which is always going to be a one-shot in that thing. Even if they're using, like, max special defense, it's just going to get destroyed by that. So, hoping that this thing's going to put in some work. I really think we can get some surprise KOs with it, and I'm really excited to see what it can do. The last member, as I mentioned, is the Urshifu, and of course we are running the Choice Scarf set. Not a lot to really talk about with this guy. We've got Surging Strikes as our main stab, Close Combat to hit that Hydreigon harder, we've got U-Turn here for momentum, and we've got Poison Jab to snipe the Tapu Bulu. Now, the EV spread here, max attack, just to hit as hard as possible, and then we've got enough speed here to outspeed the Talonflame. So as I mentioned, if we get that U-Turn off, for example, with Moltres, we can then go out into our Urshifu here, and we will always outspeed even max speed Jolly Talonflame, and we can just destroy that thing with 3 Surging Strikes. So, again, Poison Jab there to hit the Tapu Bulu. This set is going to be a little bit more prediction reliant, but I think that it definitely has its place in this game. And like I said, if we get rid of the Toxapex with our Heracross or with our Lycanroc or even Tangrowth, you know, we can put in big work with this guy. So I'm hoping that these kind of surprise sets are going to put in work. I don't think he's going to expect me to bring the Lycanroc, so let's see how it goes down in the battle. Alright guys, so we're here for the battle, and looking at the matchup, this is everything that I expected Tessie to bring except for the Blastoise. Was not really expecting that Pokemon to come out. I figured that Toxapex would be a much more reliable option. However, I do understand it from the perspective of him bringing Talonflame. If Talonflame gets knocked off, obviously that's an issue because if rocks are up, that thing's taking 50% every time it comes out, gonna make its job a lot harder. So I guess he was prioritizing spin over the walling capabilities. Either way, in terms of our lead here, I figured that I want to lead something that isn't going to lose to Hydreigon immediately. And based on the calcs I showed you guys in the team builders, Moltres is going to be our option of choice. So I'm going to go ahead and lead off with Moltres here, as he leads off with Palossand. And I figured this was a great position for us turn 1. He might be scared of a Specs Fire Blast or a really strong special attack. So I really did not see him staying in. I thought he could either scout with Talonflame if it's specially defensive, or go out into Blastoise, or even the Hydreigon if he wants to take a more offensive approach. So I go for a U-turn, and I end up really, really regretting this decision because he goes for Shadow Ball here.
That's a lot of damage.
and it does 98% to our Tangrowth. Now, that is very unusual damage. Despite the fact that we have no bulk in terms of special defense or HP, Shadow Ball should not be doing that much damage. And when I saw that, that to me immediately said, okay, this is a Specs Palossand. Kind of a crazy bring, but if you look at my team, I don't really have a switch into it, assuming that he predicts correctly, right? So if I brought Muck, for example, Earth Power is going to destroy that thing. Everything else pretty much gets destroyed by Shadow Ball. So I understand why he brought this. And looking at this here, I was thinking, okay, on the one hand, I can just go for a Sleep Powder. He's got nothing that really wants to take that. But he might expect that and maybe want to go out into Tapu Bulu. So if anything, I'd like to try to get off a strong hit here. I know that my Tangrowth is faster than Palossand can ever be. Max can be is 185. So I go ahead and click Leaf Storm, and we're actually going to pick up an amazing turn 2 KO. So that's really huge for us. It is revealing that we are a bit more speedy if he's running speed, but honestly, I just wanted to get off some big damage at the very least. So Mawile is going to come out here. Now, my immediate response is going to have to be my Hippowdon. I don't want this thing setting up a Sword Stance in front of me for free, as that's actually what he opts to do. And I think it's really interesting that he decided to stay in regular form. Basically, that allows him to maintain the Intimidate, as you saw there on turn 2. So even if he... even if I Leaf Stormed again, it wasn't going to be doing that much, maybe like 50%, and we'd still be in a really bad spot. So I sent out Hippowdon here, and I know based on the damage calcs we looked at in the team builder that I can pretty much always take a +2 play rough. But I also want to scout for a couple other things. I want to see if he's got Ice Punch. If he has Ice Punch, that actually does more than play rough, and that can actually one-shot us. And I also figured that in scouting, I might be able to get a potential Flame Body burn on the Mawile, which would be huge. I mean, that would basically just neuter it, and that's pretty much an instant win for us, as I would see it. So I do go out into my Moltres, as Tezzy makes an amazing play here. Mega Evolves, goes for the knockoff, and just destroys us. And luckily for him, no burn. So that is a really, really disastrous turn for us. If he still has the aforementioned Ice Punch, Hippowdon is not safe, and I really don't have anything that can come in and just one-shot this Pokemon. So I'm definitely a little bit fearful here. I figured that my best play is actually go out into my Tangrowth, and he saw that we were offensive, so he's probably thinking that I want to try to get off a strong hit here. So I felt pretty confident going for Sleep Powder. Now, if he's Max Speed Adamant, we would at least Speed Tie, and I felt like, unfortunately, turn 5, I have to take a risk like this. So I go ahead and go for the Sleep Powder, as thankfully he goes for the Sucker Punch. That's going to provide us with a really, really important opportunity here, because we went second on this turn, meaning that Mawile has yet to burn any turns of sleep, meaning that we guaranteed have a safe switch here into Hippowdon, at least for this turn. Now, moving forward, he could wake up next turn, destroy me with Ice Punch, and we probably just lose the game. So I really, really need some sleep turns to go my way. I am not going to mess around with this thing. It is a huge threat to my team. Just going to go right for the high horsepower as he opts to go out into Tapu Bulu. So really, really smart play on his end. And in this position, I'm actually still in a pretty bad spot. To give you guys some context here, this was a format where we still thought that the Tapus had their moves like Play Rough, you know, like Expanding Force, all these other crazy moves that they didn't end up getting. So in this format here, Tapu Bulu is allowed to run Play Rough. Now, as we know, currently does not get that move, but here it's legal. So I saw my team and I'm like, well, I have no Fairy Resist. My Tangrowth is not physically defensive. So I kind of ran some calcs, had to make an important choice here. I'm like, if he's banded or, you know, some kind of boosting move, I probably lose a Pokemon here. So I really, really thought about it, and I was like, okay, Mawile's still healthy. I really need that thing for, I really need Hippowdon for that. So I figured I really can't afford to lose my Hippowdon here. So I'm going to pull a switch into Tangrowth as he goes for a Horn Leech and does 34%. I think that damage was banded. I can't recall. But I do remember that when I ran the calc, it was like I had a chance to live the next one. So I figure my best play is just to go for a Leaf Storm, try to get off as much damage as we possibly can. And I think he's probably scouting for a Sludge Bomb here, so he pulls a switch into Mawile, as we're going to do an insane 81% to the Mawile, which is, again, that's just ridiculous damage. And that's exactly what I was talking about in the team builder, where like this thing is doing big damage to his team no matter what, even if you resist it. So next turn here, I'm going to pull switch back into Hippowdon. It's overall my safest play, as he pulls an excellent double switch into his Hydreigon. So you can see that Tezzy is definitely a veteran player. He knows what he's doing. He knows that I'm going to be making these safe plays, and he's capitalizing on the ones that I'm making. So really, really smart in his part. Right here, I acknowledge that, you know, if he specs, somebody has to die to Draco. However, if he is just Life Orb, we actually always will live the Draco, so hopefully the calc shows here. It does not. However, basically, trust me when I say that Life Orb Timid Draco Meteor does not one-shot us. It actually does a maximum of 98%. So knowing that, I felt pretty safe here just going for Stealth Rock. I figured that since the Mawile is now at, 25%, it's not really a threat anymore. Anybody can revenge kill it. And I'd rather just get up rocks in a rare situation where maybe that Talonflame isn't boots, but also rocks help whittle down this Hydreigon. It chips away at Bulu, Blastoise every time they switch in, and that's going to make my offensive teammates' job of cleaning up a lot easier. So I decide here, I'm just going to let probably Hippowdon go down, as unfortunately he does miss a Draco. And we talked about it a little bit after the game. We don't really think it mattered too much. I actually would have preferred that maybe had hit, because if he didn't have Nasty Plot and he just KO'd me in the next turn, that would have given me a free Swords Dance with my Lycanroc, and I had a few turns to just smash through his team. So maybe it was better that he missed it, maybe it wasn't. We can't really say for sure, but either way, I'm able to get up my Stealth Rock for free there. That's quite nice for us. This next turn here, I believe I just end up going for the Rock Slide. Just trying to get off some last-minute chip. If he doesn't have Roost, then this is great for us, because now this thing is in range of a lot of other attacks. And here I acknowledge, okay, if he kills us off, that's fine. If he goes for a Roost, I'd rather keep my Hippowdon a little bit healthy. So he's going to go for a Roost, as I end up going for a Slack Off. And now this is kind of bad, because he can just keep launching off these Dark Pulses. So my best play, unironically, is actually to just try to Life Orb stall and maybe try to condition him into clicking Dark Pulse here. So he's going to go for Dark Pulse again as he gets a flinch. And this next turn is super, super important. So it's even here, right? It's 5-5. But I'm arguably down because I've got a weakened Tangrowth. My Hippowdon's about to go down here. And he's still got a relatively healthy team outside of that Mawile. So right here, I figure that, him clicking Draco basically nets a KO. But I really sat and thought about this turn for a very, very long time. I think he should have gone for Draco here. Yes, he could have missed, but I don't think that matters when the worst I can do is like 20% with Rock Slide. However, I was so confident here that he was going to go for the Dark Pulse that I make a crazy read, go out into my Urshifu, knowing that I can take a Dark Pulse, as I do just that, and that's wonderful for me because now I outspeed this thing and I can go for a U-turn. If he stays in, U-turn's going to do enough damage to where I can just sack off a Hippowdon, and then now I get in my Lycanroc underneath sand. So I go for the U-turn here as he goes out into Blastoise. And it's revealed to be Rocky Helmet, so now I'm understanding, okay, this was his way of beating Urshifu, was, me going for a Surging Strikes into this thing and just taking like 60% from Rocky Helmet. So I got to keep that in mind whenever I bring out my Urshifu. So I'm going to take this as an opportunity to Mega Evolve my Heracross. I'm just going to go right for the Bolt Seed. Don't want to mess around with the Blastoise, as he's going to end up sacking off the Mawile, which I do agree with. And this is going to give him a free switch into the Talonflame. So basically right here I acknowledge that, Hippowdon's basically done its job. Just going to throw that thing out here as he goes for the Will-O-Wisp, I believe. And this next turn I'm going to make yet another crazy play. This was actually insane. So I know Tezzy's a good player, and I know there's only two things you do in this situation. Either you go for a Swords Dance, or you want to pull a switch here, because I could potentially have Rock Slide the way I brought it in like this. And if you go for Brave Bird, for example, that doesn't even KO a Hippowdon at this range. So that would be terrible if you take a Rock Slide plus Recoil plus Sandstorm. Your Talonflame is pretty much going to be out of the game. Not to mention he's got a Hydreigon that, as we saw, can really easily take advantage of the Hippo and just go for Roost in front of that thing. So I'm going to make a really risky play here yet again. I'm going to pull another double switch into my Urshifu as he ends up going out into Hydreigon. So I do get that play correctly. That's really nice for us. And I'm just going to click U-turn again. I don't mind if he goes out into the Blastoise. Urshifu's nice to have in the late game here, but realistically with Bulu in the end, it's really hard for me to do anything with Close Combat or Surging Strike. So just going to go for a U-turn, not going to bother predicting anything, as this is going to give me an opportunity here to go out into my Heracross, which I thought would be a good play. However, based on this turn at the end here, there's some really, really important evidence that was revealed. And so what I'm talking about is, if you look, you can't see the text, but it says that the opposing weeb name, I don't know, was buffeted by the Sandstorm, and then I was buffeted by the Sandstorm. So for those who don't know, in Pokemon, at the end of each turn, if Sand or Hail is up, the faster Pokemon will be struck first. So looking at that, I know that this type of Bulu is actually faster than our Heracross, and that's an issue because, as I mentioned, this thing does have access to Play Rough in this format. So knowing that, I have to switch out here. I'm just going to sack off my Hippowdon, seeing as it's not very useful anymore. It's at 25%. It's burned. Not really going to do a good job of checking anything. And once I sack this is going to give me an opportunity to go out into my Lycanroc. Now, this is very risky because you could say that going out into Urshifu Poison Jabbing is more consistent. However, he could just switch into Blastoise. Now I'm taking even more chip. I really felt like Lycanroc was going to force progress. And although I do have to hit a Stone Edge, the game is so close right now that I feel like I have to take some risks if I want to win it. So I'm going to go for the Stone Edge. Thankfully, we're going to land. The crit did not matter on that, we later found out. I don't think he was even defensive at all. I believe he was just like an offensive set. So luckily, we're able to connect with that thing. The Blastoise is going to come out, so I'm going to pull a switch here into my Tangrowth as we're able to take a Scald pretty comfortably. And this is wonderful for us because now we can just throw off another Specs Leaf Storm. So Hydreigon's going to come out. That thing is going to get absolutely destroyed. And he, of course, is going to go out into his Talonflame. So my response should always be going out into my Lycanroc. Because if he goes for a Swords Dance, I need to threaten a Revenge KO with Stone Edge. And as we saw in the Team Builder, I do not have the Accelerock. So I cannot allow this thing to get up a Swords Dance. Because if he does, it could be very dangerous for us. Let's say he goes for a Swords Dance, knocks me out here. If I go to Urshifu and I go for Surging Strikes, that's the only way I can KO this. And if he goes into Blastoise, I'm going to die to Rocky Helmet. And then Talonflame comes in, SDs, and just wins the game. So I have to pull a hard switch here into my Lycanroc, as unfortunately for Tezzy, he is going to miss a Will-O-Wisp. At this point, we exchange GGs, but the game is not over. It's definitely not over. So we later talked about it, and we basically, acknowledged that the Will-O-Wisp miss didn't really change too much. But these next turns, you're going to see there is something that could have changed the outcome of the game. So I go for Stone Edge here as he goes for a Will-O-Wisp, able to land this time. Or able to land again, luckily, get the KO as he goes out into Blastoise. And it's at this turn I think that the game is over, but I actually make a really, really big misplay here, and if Tezzy had capitalized on this, he actually would have won the game, which is crazy to think about, but I really think he probably would have won on the spot. So I figure my best play is probably not to choke. In the moment, I said just go for damage, get off damage on this thing. It's going to put it in range of close combat, and you'll be good to go. All we've seen is Scald and Rocky Helmet, so I figure, okay, this is just a defensive set, nothing to worry about. Let's just, get the chip and call it a day. So I go for close combat as Tezzy reveals Shell Smash. And this is a big deal because now this Blastoise is in range of Torrent, and it's got these special attack boosts. So this is a big deal for us because we do not have the Accelerock. Now, if we had Accelerock, we would always just stay in this next turn, go for close combat. It's going to be in range of Accelerock, and that's the game. However, we don't have that. So if he Shell Smashes again right here, he actually wins the whole game because you're about to see how much damage Scald does to my Heracross after this next turn. And if he has Ice Beam, or maybe even just from Torrent and the special attack boost themselves, he might have even been able to knock out Tangrowth because we don't have that any kind of bulk investment. So right here, I go for a close combat again, as thankfully he just goes for a Scald. But as you're about to see with this damage on Heracross, it's going to do 81%, meaning that if he had gone for another Shell Smash, he might have just won the game on the spot. So definitely a big misplay by me. However, we are able to tank that, and we're able to get the KO with Bullet Seed, clinching a narrow 3-0 in my favor. So that's going to be the game there. Really, really, really crazy match. I do want to show off that calc because this is important to acknowledge. Even in your victory, you always want to analyze where could you have done better. Let me see if I can actually pan to the different zoom here. Give me a second, guys. Oh, this is really unfortunate. Oh, there we go. Okay, so let's switch here to the window view. Perfect. So what I want to show off here is that let's go ahead and pull up Blastoise, and let's assume that he was max defense, max HP. Let's go ahead and throw that on. We'll put bold. Now, I think he definitely had some kind of special attack based on the damage he was doing to Heracross. Let's do +2, and let's put him in Torrent range. So we'll say 30%. At +2, that's Surf. Scald, as you can see here, is going to be doing that much. So he definitely had some special attack investment, which is actually worse for us because that's another reason to say why this was a bad play. But let's go ahead and illustrate something here. So let's say on the turn that I had gone for the close combat with Lycanroc, let's say I pulled a hard switch into my Heracross as he Shell Smashed. He was at 51% on that turn. So I would pull a switch into my Heracross, and let's say he's at +2 now, right? He is no longer in Torrent, which is good for us, so Scald is not going to be doing anywhere near as much damage. So worst case scenario, let's say he's at 51 here, and let's say he goes for Scald, and let's say he gets the burn too, right? So Heracross here, even if we are burned, at -1 defense, we actually always get the KO on Blastoise. So I'll show that here. Let's do status burned. And you can see that even if we are burned, at -1 defense, even if he was max defense, max HP, for example, Bullet Seed would always pick up that KO versus the Blastoise, and we would always live the Scald. Because again, he was not in Torrent range, so most likely we even lived a crit at worst. So that just goes to show you that it's always important to really analyze like what's going on in the game. You can never just make assumptions based on what you've seen, right? So you always want to be thinking, what is the overall best play to make? And that was a really important learning, point for me too, because the game could have gone much, much differently if I did not, if he did not go for Scald in that turn. Turn 29 here. If he'd gone for another Shelf Smash, I probably just lost the game, which would have been super embarrassing. But thankfully, that's not how it played out, so we were able to get this victory. That's going to be it for me, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you in the next episode. Peace.